No other form of life can do intentionally, can self-regulate, can self-initiate all of the processes that we do. Human chromosome number 2, this one gene alone, there are many genes in chromosome 2. This one gene alone, right here, TBR1, gives us our enlarged brain, our capacity for emotion, sympathy, empathy, compassion, the ability to build neurons from one gene that no other form of life has. Look at this. This is our nearest primate relative. This is a chimpanzee. We appeared suddenly on Earth 200,000 years ago with a brain twice as large as our nearest relative. Right there. It didn't happen slowly, gradually, over a long period of time. That's the problem. There is no record of this slow, gradual, iterative process. It's like, boom, we showed up and nobody knows exactly where. So when I began to understand, I said, wow, where did human chromosome number 2 come from? And that's what blows the door off the mystery and opens an even bigger mystery. So I just wanted to be really clear right here. There's what's called the lizard brain, fundamental things, breathing, hunger, thirst, balance, reproductive drive, all those kinds of things. The mammalian brain is memory and social abilities, anxiety, fear, hate, jealousy, all comes from there. This is the new brain from human chromosome number 2, right there, the neocortex. Now, where did it come from? I'm going to give you the technical language from the scientists, and then we'll talk about what that means. So this is from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So this isn't my theory. It's not my hypothesis. It's not channeling from a higher being or the angelic realms. The bottom line, we conclude that human chromosome 2 is the relic of an ancient DNA fusion of 2 ancestral ape chromosomes, telomere to telomere. Telomeres are at the end of the DNA. You're probably hearing about those because of health and longevity. So if a telomere exists at the end of one chromosome and it's fused, you're going to be able to see where that fusion happens, because the telomere is only supposed to be on the end of the chromosome. If it's in the middle, it means it was fused with something else, and that is exactly what happened. It says the fusion must have been followed by the elimination of overlapping functions as well as events that stabilize the fusion. So that's the technical language right there. And this is where the telomeres are. They're in the middle instead of on the ends where they should be. This is human chromosome number 2 right here. It is the product of these 2 chromosomes coming together. Now, there are some people that say that means we came from apes. Not necessarily. It's kind of like, and this is where you have to be really careful talking about this, it's like the best, most intelligent DNA available on Earth was taken and fused into a higher form of life. All right? And when it happened, some of the DNA was taken away, some of it was added, but here's the telltale sign. Here's the thing. If you have 2 complete chromosomes and they are fused into one, can you see where the functions would be overlapping and redundant? So here's what happened. Once the fusion happened, the overlapping things were either cut away, they were taken away, or they were turned off to stabilize the fusion and make it very efficient. What scientists now say is the function, what resulted. So the cortex of the brain, the precision to be able to turn these things off and on, and the timing, the fact that it happened suddenly 200,000 years ago when we appeared, suggests something beyond evolution. And here's where science opens the door to uncharted territory. Here's where science opens the door to forbidden language, because what they are now saying is this fusion appears to be intentional. Who or what, we have no idea, but this is where science has arrived. They said this is not a natural process, could not have happened naturally, something intervened, and now the scientists say we have to stop there because we don't know what to say beyond that. So the question is, who or why did this? Every civilization, every society, every culture has their own answer. The ancient Babylonians, they had their answer. If you study Zecharia Sitchin's work, you know what that is. The Aboriginals, I was just in Australia, they've got their answer. They tell us. The Navajo of the American Desert Southwest, they have their story. The Egyptians have their story. The Hindus have their story. Christians have their story. The original Hebrew traditions have their story. The Navajo have their story. Scientists have had this story called evolution. There's a program on TV that has a very different idea. Okay, and now the DNA, this is forensic evidence. It means we're looking in the past at what already happened. Something happened. We appeared 200,000 years ago, and the honest truth is we don't know how this happened. If scientists can be honest, truthful, and factual and embrace that, then we can free ourselves from the dogma and the story that no longer fits and begin to find the answers. But academia is very invested in the story of evolution. And there's a big controversy going on now because the DNA is overturning all that other evidence. That DNA evidence didn't exist until a few years ago. And now it's there. It can't be there. It's there. And they're saying, what are we going to do with it? And that's the struggle. So who or why did this? We don't know the answer. But what I wanted you to know, evolution, I'm a geologist. I have to tell you, this is great. I was doing this interview on the radio, and a very antagonistic interviewer, and we began having this conversation, and he was upset with me. He said, Greg, what the hell do you know? You're a geologist. I said, do you know what Charles Darwin's profession was? And he said, no. I said, he was a geologist. And then the guy said, okay, let's go to a station break. So as a geologist, I can tell you evolution, I've seen it in the fossil record for some forms of life, for some plants and animals. The data is breaking down when it comes to humans. And I have a lot of respect for Charles Darwin. He lived in a different world. It was a different time. And he was trying to get us out of the realm of religion to explain who we are. In my opinion, where Darwin went wrong was he took some observations that he made for some forms of life at one point on the planet, in one moment in time, and he tried to generalize them to include all life, everywhere, forever, including humans, and the data simply doesn't support that. I wrote a book in 2003, it was released in 2004, called The God Code. What I did was I followed the instructions in a 3,000-year-old sacred text that had only been translated into English once. It's a Hebrew text called the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation. And it is as if someone were watching the moment that creation happened and recording it as a scribe, step by step. And it's language, it's words. I said, what would happen if I took those words and I converted the words into the periodic table of elements? So rather than taking fire and water and air and earth to make a human, what if we took, and there's a logic to this, what if we took hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon? And I began working with it from this perspective. What if that text was actually telling us a chemical formula? And if that's true, it means that the DNA in our bodies can literally be read like the letters of a page of a newspaper or a book. There is a message in the DNA of all life. So I came from that perspective. I did the work, I did the mathematics, and there is a message in the DNA of all life. It's in layers. The very first layer, the very first message in your body, every cell in your body has the same message. And the message, when it's translated, literally reads, the DNA literally reads, God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body. Now, why is that message in the human genome? I don't know. I just followed the instructions in the 3,000-year-old text to the T, and it's there. So someone figured out how to store data in DNA a long time ago. Now, immediately after I wrote that book, Japanese scientists came out with a report. They took bacteria and they began storing data in the DNA of bacteria, and they stored an entire library, a city block long, inside of the bacteria, and they let the bacteria reproduce 2,500 generations, and then they pulled the data out intact. It says that we are just now learning to store information inside of living DNA. If we're doing it now, it's possible that an advanced form of life has done that a long time ago. If we are the product of an intentional act, what better way to alert the beings that carry the message than to encode it within their very lives, within the DNA itself? Now that we have the technology, I get goosebumps just saying that. Now that we have the technology, we can literally read. That's right, we can read a message. And think about this, when we create something today, if you create a piece of art and you're proud of it, what's the last thing you do with that piece of art? Or a sculpture? Or you create a piece of electronics. Every tiny piece of electronics has an identifying mark on it somewhere. If we are the product of an intentional creation, I would not be surprised that within us is the mark of who or whatever's responsible in a way that would last as long as we do, that could not be destroyed like a temple wall, or could not be destroyed like an old manual or a text. It lives in the life itself.